Hi, Christian Murray, co-publisher of the Queen's Post here. Today I'll be talking to Council Member Jimmy Van Bramer. He completes his final term in office at the end of this year after serving 12 years in the council, serving Sunnyside, Long Island City, Woodside and parts of Astoria. We talk about the construction of new schools, dog runs, bike lanes, as well as real estate development. But first, I would like to mention that Queen's Post is a sponsor for our podcasts. We would like to thank Major World Auto, the large auto dealership located at 4340 Northern Boulevard in Long Island City. It offers thousands of pre-owned cars. The company offers a variety of models such as used Mercedes-Benzes. To check out Major World's inventory, go to majorworld.com or call 866-614-2884 to find out more. Thanks.
Hello, Councilman. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So it's been 12 very long years, I'm sure, the way you look at it. But you've done a lot over those years, new schools, new parks, library upgrades, etc. What would you say was your best achievement over the years? And furthermore, do you think the neighborhoods of your district are better today than they were in January 2010?
Yes, so it's very hard to boil 12 years of work into one favored accomplishment, but I think it is a record. The 15 brand new schools in District 26, that is over $1.5 billion of investment in the future of our neighborhoods and into the education of our kids. Over 10,000 new school seats added. That is a record in any council district over the last 12 years. So I'm enormously proud to have been as proactive as a council member could be in making sure that sites were selected, purchased by the city of New York, and then ultimately having those schools funded, built, and are under construction. So very, very proud of that. And of course, I've been a champion of our parks, and virtually every park in the district has been renovated or rebuilt, and over $200 million investment. The Queensbridge seawall was collapsed and in the river when I became the council member, and it had been so for 30 years. We got that done. The Hunters Point Library had been promised for almost 30 years to the neighborhood. We got that project done. And there's just time and time again where we wouldn't say no, and we kept fighting because it would be good for our neighbors. And without question, I feel like we are leaving the district better than we found it. Our schools are very good. Our parks are improved. We have so many new schools being built. Our libraries are stronger than ever. Funding for our local nonprofits are as strong as ever. And these are good neighborhoods. They're good neighborhoods. I was grateful to represent them for 12 years and feel very much like we've given it our all, and we leave them in a very good place.
What do you think has been the biggest change over the 12 years you've been in office, Jimmy?
In the district?
Yeah, in the district. I mean, New York City has undergone a massive change, but so too has District 26, maybe even more so, with all the new development, all the new people that have come, the new dynamics, the political feeling. What have you noticed, and how will it manifest itself maybe for the next council person? Julie, one.
Yeah, no, look, I think our district has certainly grown. I think that's brought a lot of new residents to the district, new neighbors, new families coming to live here. And look, folks wouldn't come here unless they thought these were great neighborhoods to come and raise their family in. And so you see an influx of new residents in Long Island City and Sunnyside, and Woodside, and Astoria, because they're great neighborhoods and people want to live in them, and that's a good thing for the future of our neighborhoods and our city. So, I think that change, of course, does sometimes produce angst in some, and sometimes there are longer time residents who may resent them or resent some of the changes that they bring. But the one thing about a city of almost 9 million people is that change is inevitable, and neighborhoods change all the time, and that's part of the vibrancy of a big city.
Right. I mean, one of the big changes, of course, has been real estate prices, right? Real estate prices have gone up significantly, and that's also put a pressure on affordable housing and issues like that. How do you think, I mean, you were a big fan of, well, fan is maybe not the right word, but you supported FIPS, the affordable housing development there. What do you think needs to be done moving forward in terms of affordable housing, given these pressures?
Well, you need to build more affordable housing. You need to create more 100% affordable projects, and you need to summon the political will to actually push them forward in the face of opposition from some. One of the things you learn doing this work is that the loudest voices are the most negative, and you rarely hear from people who support an issue or a project, right? Because they're happy with the way things are going. So you just have to put those things in perspective, and 100% affordable housing projects should be one of the things that we continue to push for, using, to the extent possible, nonprofit developers. But we've done some work in Hunters Point that I'm really proud of. The first two buildings in parcel A and B are 100% affordable. Folks could argue about making them more affordable, and that's a valid discussion to have. But before those two buildings, everything in Hunters Point was 100% market rate. There were 0 affordable housing units built before I became the council member, and now we've built thousands of affordable housing units. So, the desirability of living in our neighborhoods is great, but it also drives real estate prices up and rents too high, and we just need much more aggressive strategies around keeping rents under control and allowing people to continue to live in their neighborhoods. Rent laws are good, and we need more of them. And then I think we need to be able to build affordable housing when it makes sense, and not to be afraid to do that.
Mm. Now, in terms of your 12-year tenure, were there any sort of periods of time that you preferred more than others? I mean, your first 2 terms were much smoother than, say, your final term, when, obviously issues such as Amazon beyond your control, or just came out of nowhere, really, announced that it was coming. And then, of course, you had another issue, of course, was, protected bike lanes in Sunnyside. But were there any particular periods where it was more fun to be a council person, or where you felt as though it was easier, or what have you?
It's never easy being a council member. It is incredibly hard work. And I have worked essentially 24/7 for 12 years on behalf of the people that I work for. I've been visible, I've been accessible, we've delivered results. And so I'm grateful for the entire time that I've been a council member. Obviously, when you first come in, it's very exciting and everything is new, and you sort of discover the things that you're able to do, the powers that you have to help your neighborhood. And so that's always a very exciting time when you're a first time elected official and you join the body. But I am grateful for the entire 12 years. And, some of the tougher fights are certainly challenging to engage in. But, I know that I did what I thought was right. I believe in the things that I've done very strongly, and we leave the neighborhood very strong.
Okay. If you were to look at Amazon today, do you think it worked out for Long Island City in the end, that they never made it, that they never came?
Look, I think that there are two things. One is, if you don't care about the income inequality that exists in this country, in this city, in this world, you're not paying attention enough. It's absolutely outrageous and immoral that some people have hundreds of billions of dollars and don't pay any taxes. It's absolutely outrageous that trillion-dollar corporations don't essentially pay any taxes. And then the vast majority of people who live in our district, live month to month, paycheck to paycheck, and many line up on lines outside of food pantries. So it is absolutely imperative that we fought that just and moral battle to say, no, we shouldn't give the richest men in the world and the richest corporation billions of dollars in incentives. And furthermore, the record that Amazon has in terms of its workers, how it treats its workers, I'm just amazed still to this day that many people who proclaim to be pro-worker, even pro-union, look the other way when it comes to Amazon's record. They are the most anti-union corporation in the world, refuse to allow their workers to organize, intervene in efforts when they do organize, as in Bessemer, Alabama, and are just known to have been so abusive. It's part of their profit driven way of business, and it's sort of how they do their business, and it's wrong. So we fought on those two principles. And look, I am very much in favor of tech coming to New York City and new businesses coming to New York City and companies growing, but they've got to be able to both do it on their own and not take billions of dollars in subsidies.
But those subsidies were already baked
Christian,
in, right?
and they've got to treat their workers right. And if we have companies that we know are hostile to unions and workers, I haven't heard you talk about that, right? I hear you countering on the tax argument, but how we treat our workers matters, and I'll always be right about that.
Okay, all right. Because some might argue that it was sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That
first of all,
that's the system we live in. They're the tax breaks that were put in by New York State, etc., and that sort of it was all part of the system. And rather than reinvent the system, they could have come in and built up from there, kind of thing.
That sounds like a recipe to disaster for me if you're a worker making $15 an hour. And when I hear you say, well, that's the system, and that's the system,
capitalism. Yeah.
Right. But does that, to me, that means that poverty is inevitable and that hunger is inevitable. And that a certain portion of our population, in fact, the vast majority of our population, have to live near, at, or below poverty level in order for Jeff Bezos to be worth hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't accept that premise. I think it's immoral. And I think we have an obligation to fight back against that. That doesn't mean that people can't succeed. That doesn't mean that people can't create wealth and create jobs. Of course, they can and they will. But it does mean that we should actually demand better and more without question. And the truth is, which rarely gets reported, is that Amazon wasn't pushed out. Amazon left.
Well, also, they didn't come to Queens either. I mean, and that could have made a big impact to Western Queens as sort of a hub. I mean, it may still become a hub, but that would have changed the face of Long Island City.
Right. Many people think not for the better.
Right. Maybe that. Well, that's right. Maybe not.
And I think you talked about affordability. I think that's the thing, is people talk about affordability, prices rising, rents rising. You talked about that, but then at the same time, people are saying, well, then we could have had Amazon, and Amazon would have driven rents and prices up exponentially, driving out the working class and creating something that is not what we have now. But look, Amazon was one thing that happened in 12 years, and
True.
to spend the entire interview
I agree.
talking about Amazon is a disservice to the time that I've served.
No, and fair enough. Okay. Was it though tough after Amazon took place in terms of the community? People were obviously very for it, some were very against it. And was it easy to bring the community back together again after that? And was it hard for you to sort of talk to people or do your job after that? Or?
No, I think it was certainly a very intense time in the city and in the work that we do, but we've continued to deliver for Long Island City. Long Island City has continued to thrive, by the way. And everyone will tell you that. So we're building new schools. We have world-class parks. We have amazing libraries, and it's a great neighborhood. And we've continued to deliver for Long Island City.
Right. And what other? I mean, how have you sort of seen like the community boards change and sort of just the general dynamics of the people in the district?
How has Community Board 2 changed? Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yeah. I mean, have you sort of, do you think it's coming to reflect the district more like the community board?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I think community boards, I believe in community boards. I think they can be incredibly important tools, but I also think they can be non-representative of their neighborhoods, in part because there are no term limits, and we are always wanting to diversify community boards and make them more reflective of the constituency that exists today, not a constituency that may have existed 20, 30, or even 40 years ago when folks were appointed to the boards. And I'm proud of Community Board 2, which continues to be much more diverse in every way, and I think much more representative of Community Board 2 today as it exists. There are still some veterans on the board, as you know, Lisa Dowler and Steve Cooper and others that have served on for a very long time and continue to make contributions. And then there are lots of new faces, newcomers to the board who offer different perspectives. And I think they do good work.
Okay. All right. I mean, what I look at all you've done over the years. I mean, you've always told me schools were the biggest thing to you. I mean, the number of school seats, citing schools, like there were many times in the past it was difficult to find land for schools. Can you just talk us a little bit about, your task in terms of getting more seats, what it involved, and
yeah, sure. I mean, there are several examples. When the community was talking about building a new school, a new elementary school south of the Boulevard to ease overcrowding in PS 199 in particular, Matt Wallace, my chief of staff, and I were driving, and we we happened to stop at a red light. They're right there at 43rd Street and 47th Avenue. And of course, the old synagogue was there, and it was a narrow lot, but I called up the head of the school construction authority and I said, I think I have a site for you. And she said, where is it? What's the address? They came out, they looked at it, and they said, we think we can build a school there. So they went about purchasing the property, which they ultimately did, and then built what is now 343, right? A great school run by Principal Brooke Barr, who lives in Sunnyside. And then we needed and hadn't built a new elementary school in Woodside in 60 years. And there was an old 1-hour photo processing plant when there used to be 1-hour photo stores all over New York City. And there was a family who owned that old factory building. I invited them to my office. We talked about what they were planning to do. And I asked them if they would consider selling it to the city for the School Construction Authority to build a new school. And the School Construction Authority ultimately bought that property, and now we have PS 361, a great school. Principal Naomi Wong is terrific there. And then the middle school in Sunnyside Gardens is a site that, of course, used to be the billiards hall and the Pulse gym. It had fallen into a state of disrepair, and that property was owned by a Sunnysider as well, as it turns out. And I said to the School Construction Authority, "What about that site? Why couldn't that be a school?" They looked at it, and they looked at it again, and they approached the owners and were able to buy that property. And now we have a middle school rising very fast now in Sunnyside Gardens, which I'm very proud of. And so I was an activist, because at certain times they would say, you have to go out and find the schools. You have to go out and find the locations. And that's not something I thought would be a part of my job description when I got elected, but I embraced it. We went out and we found some sites. School Construction Authority, working with Lorraine Grillo, has been a pleasure. She really did a great job in terms of delivering on the promise of building new schools and alleviating overcrowding. IS 125, that had needed desperately an extension for decades. We got that done. PS 11, the former principal, Anna F. Garpides, had wanted that built for 30 years. Tragically, she died last week. I went to her wake last night. But that extension at PS 11 is something that took a very long time. And I'm glad it was able to get done while I'm the council member. So it's not like it just happens. We aggressively worked on all those projects to make them be able to come to fruition. And I'm grateful that Anna F. Garpides saw that day. She was retired, but she came back to cut the ribbon on PS 11. And there are other examples as well. But PS 384 opened this September in Long Island City. Hunters Point desperately fought for PS 384 for many years. Academy of American Studies High School is going to open early next year. These are all good projects. This is the stuff that lasts long beyond an elected official's tenure, right?
Well, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, take Luladati Park. I mean, Rick Doro is not going anywhere, right? So therefore, dog runs and things like that. I understand. What's the latest on Noonan? There's going to be a dog run put in there.
Yeah. I think.
And then of course you went to a ribbon cutting today. So just talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, look, Rick Duro, and again, I mean, we don't always have to agree on every issue, but Rick Duro knows that when I was running for office, he and a group of folks showed me their plans for what would be a dog run and a renovation at Ladati, and I said, if I win, I will get this done, and we did, and we built that dog ground, which of course Rick and Suds care for dutifully, and then we built several other dog grounds. And so I'm proud to have not only built more schools than any other council member, but I might have built more dog runs than any other council member. I don't know that for a fact. I know the schools for a fact. And so we're building another one because Noonan Playground, which some of the kids called Rainbow Playground, when I became the council member and I went to PS 199, one of the students when I was there raised her hand and she said, what if you fixed Rainbow Park? And I wasn't even sure what Rainbow Park was because I thought it was Noonan Playground, but she explained to me that the rainbow sprinkler system is why the kids call it Rainbow Park. And I said, well, if you think we should do that, then we'll do that. And this was a young woman who went to PS 199 and ultimately 125. And so we did. I went there with the Parks Commissioner. I saw that the ground underneath the sprinkler system was broken up. And I thought, all these little kids are running through the sprinkler system with their bare feet sometimes, I bet, and they could cut their feet. And I said, this is unacceptable. We have to redo this. So I put several $1 million in, and we rebuilt the park and the playground, and we improved the rainbow because I knew how important the rainbow sprinkler element was to the children of the community. So we built an even better rainbow sprinkler element. And then folks said we should redo the basketball and handball courts. And we funded that in phase 2. And then folks came to me and said, why don't we do the rest? And why don't we build a dog run and Noonan Playground? And I funded that. So we're doing that. That has been designed. The construction will begin next year, and it'll open up obviously under my successor's tenure. But I'm proud that we did all of Noonan Playground, renovated every inch of it. And once that new dog run is in and the renovation takes place at that section of Noonan, it'll be a greatly improved Noonan Playground and Park with all 3 phases completed. And today we cut the ribbon on Doughboy, and we talked about the seawall at Queensbridge Park, but also there was a park house that was abandoned for decades. And I knew that the Long Island City YMCA Little League baseball is played there. And I hated that the children would play there, particularly the children from Queensbridge and Ravenswood, and see abandoned buildings all the time. And so I funded and rebuilt the park house to now what is a beautiful state-of-the-art park house. And because it's about dignity, right? It's about making sure that every school, every library, every park, it confers dignity on the people of our district. They should look good, and if they don't, we should put the money in to improve them. We've done that all across the district in every neighborhood. We just saw Dutch Kills Playground today as well. One of the projects I'm most proud of. That is a beautiful gut renovation of Dutch Kills Playground. There are examples all over the place, and that's why being a council member, it's one of the ways you can really tangibly improve your community. You can see what your work has accomplished and what the taxpayer dollars invested wisely produce. They produce meaningful changes that enhance the quality of life of all of the residents of the district. And we've done that. I know I've got some haters, but the results speak for themselves. The results speak for themselves.
Right. Yeah. I mean, let's talk about a controversial issue, but one which you really did a lot on, and that is construction of bike infrastructure. I mean, you really sort of got heavily involved when Queens Boulevard started, right? That was really when the big push occurred. You were in charge. You were the council member when phase 1 of the whole design was in the works. So really, it really relied on this district to get the whole thing going. So,
Yeah.
Just tell us about your role in this and your views on what you've accomplished in terms of, protected bike lanes, transportation, etc.
Sure. Well, look, the truth is that Queens Boulevard has been incredibly dangerous for a very long time. We know it was known as the Boulevard of Death because upwards of 18 people would die each year along Queens Boulevard. Pedestrians hit by cars. This is documented, right? This is a real.
Was it each year?
Not each year, but up to 18 people
Oh yeah, okay.
would be killed on Queens Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
That is an unacceptable loss of life. And so when the city came to me with the idea that we would redesign Queens Boulevard to make it safer, and that would include a protected bike lane, I absolutely thought we should do this. And there were lots of community meetings, lots of sessions where the community was involved, and it went to the community board. And I showed up that night along with Transportation Commissioner Polly Trottenberg, who of course now is working in Joe Biden's administration under the Secretary of Transportation. And we both implored the community board to vote for it. They did so, and it happened. And immediately after that redesign occurred, which includes a protected bike lane, we went to 0 deaths on Queens Boulevard for the next 4 years. There's no question in my mind that lives were saved, that had we not done that, some people might have died. And so not only was phase 1 successful because we got involved, but then there was a phase 2 and a phase 3 and a phase 4, and I hope there'll be a phase 5 and maybe 6, which is absolutely making Queens Boulevard safer for everyone. It is still, as you know, full of lots of cars. It is essentially a mini highway that cuts through residential neighborhoods. And it'll always be a place where there are lots of car traffic. Sorry about that. I got a phone call. But it is now also a place that has protected bike lanes and is safer for people to cross, because there's still lots of pedestrians who cross Queens Boulevard north and south. So I'm enormously proud of that. And when I ran in 2009, I was decidedly in favor of bike lanes and bike infrastructure, but that has become not just a fully fledged movement in this city and in the world, but the city of New York has absolutely embraced this movement, right? Both the outgoing mayors, both Bloomberg and then de Blasio and Eric Adams, pledging to increase and speed up the miles of protected bike lanes in the city of New York. So it is not just in Sunnyside where we have protected bike lanes. There are protected bike lanes increasingly in every single neighborhood in the city of New York. And of course, I think that's a good thing. If you care about the Green New Deal, if you support our Congresswoman's Green New Deal, then you have to believe that we have to reduce carbon emissions, that we have to encourage other modes of transportation. If you want to see fewer people killed on the streets of New York, this is important. And let me just say this, being opposed to bike lanes is a valid position. I disagree with it, clearly, but I recognize that some people
some people don't like some people are pro bike lanes, but not necessarily the location of the bike lanes.
Well, I think that's a cop out. I think that saying I'm for it, but I just don't like this location. But a lot of those folks ultimately don't like any location. And so I think it's a bit of a smokescreen. and can be a bit disingenuous.
What happens if you said, I like bike lanes, but I don't like the 39th Avenue Bike Boulevard? Would that be disingenuous or not?
Well, I mean, the Bike Boulevard is a different situation altogether.
But it is bike lanes though.
It includes a protected bike lane for portions of it.
Well, it's called a bike boulevard.
It is not even a truly protected bike lane, as you know, throughout the entire stretch.
No, but it is called a bike boulevard, and I guess that was the impetus.
Well, that's what DOT called it at the beginning. I think in hindsight they might have called it something different, because the truth is 39th Avenue is a very complicated redesign that I believe at its core is an attempt to make the thoroughfare much safer for pedestrians in particular, but for everyone. And part of that redesign is to reduce through traffic, reduce traffic coming through the neighborhood, but not of people who live in the neighborhood. And so the bike lane is a part of it, but it is not actually the majority of it, in my opinion. But I think DOT misnamed it and misrepresented it in some ways, and did a poor job of rolling it out and explaining it. And you know, I've corrected this record in the past, but we'll correct it again. The truth is, and I know it's hard in many ways to combat, you know, all the lies, but Mayor de Blasio announced this project on his own on one of his 10 a.m. press conferences, did not share it with me or any of the other local elected officials in advance. In fact, I think his own DOT was surprised in some ways by that announcement. And it required no approvals from me. I did not vote on the project. The community board did vote in favor of the project, and I certainly support the goals and objectives of it without question. I will stand by that. Having said that, I think DOT rolled it out poorly, misnamed it, and it did create some confusion and disruption that I absolutely understand from my neighbors.
Do you, Jimmy? You live on 46th Street. Do you get more traffic on your street now?
I have not noticed any increased traffic on my block. What I have noticed,
because I've heard people talk about the side streets as people keep turning on and off, that it's busier. Is that not the case? I mean, you would know more than anyone because you.
I would, and I live here, and I have not noticed any additional traffic on 46th Street at all. I have noticed a significant decrease in traffic along 39th Avenue, without question. Yeah. There are far fewer cars going up and down. That makes it safer. The truth is, 39th Avenue is really a local street now, right? It's really a local street just for locals, because if you're just trying to get to Manhattan, or you're just trying to avoid Northern or Queens Boulevard, 39th Avenue no longer works for you, right? It's too complicated, and I think that was the designer's intentions, and I think that largely works. And again, let me just say that, particularly with 39th Avenue, I understand that some people are frustrated by that. I think their anger is misdirected, and I think some people, particularly people who have screamed at my husband in our house, someone who screamed.
Tell me about that, Jimmy. What happened?
Well, I'm not going to get too much into it, but you know, the reaction to 39th Avenue, some people, and it's a minority of people, but anyone who believes that they are justified in screaming at my husband and cursing at my husband as he's on our porch in front of our house. There was one person who screamed and cursed at one of my staff members in a local playground as he was playing with his children.
What did I say?
And well, I'm not going to repeat it because it was some curse words, and you know, screaming at my staff and my family and myself is behavior that is disgusting and disgraceful, and And people are allowed to disagree with their elected officials. They're allowed to disagree. And again, I disagree with it, but it is certainly valid to be opposed to it.
Just to finish up on this topic, I mean, 43rd Avenue and Skillman Avenue, the protected bike lanes there, for some reason it generated so much controversy. Why do you think that was? And do you think some people will be able to let it go and we can get on with things? What are your thoughts?
I think the vast majority of people have moved on. I think that there is a small, concentrated group of folks who will never be able to let it go, whose hatred and anger just continue. And I think that's pretty sad. The truth is that Skillman and 43rd Avenue remain incredibly strong and viable commercial and residential strips with great restaurants, including outdoor dining, by the way, which has just flourished around the Alcove and PJ Horgan's and Sanger Hall, the Skillman, Claret, Firefly, the Lowry. You've just seen, particularly in these really challenging times of COVID, that they're succeeding. The Jonathan Cordero and his family, of course, have opened Bello, which also takes advantage of outdoor seating and curbside seating. These are great success stories. The truth is that it's worked. It's kept us safe, and it's also allowed small businesses to flourish. A lot of the doom and gloom predictions have not come to pass, and it's years on. Most people have moved on, and most people, I think, are very happy with the neighborhood, and that's what I would hope for everyone, that people would adjust when changes are happening. You don't have to like them all, but hopefully there'd be some degree of civility, and people would learn to live with the changes which are in fact inevitable. And I would argue that even while I'm not the council member, with Mayor Adams in charge, the movement is going to continue, not diminish. That you're going to see more support for bike lanes, more support for bike infrastructure, more support for outdoor dining establishments, which, particularly as COVID increases at this very moment, outdoor dining is going to continue to be a lifeline for our restaurants and cafes, bars, and pubs. It has absolutely been successful, and I'm proud to have been one of the co-sponsors. And I'm a little shocked, quite frankly, when I see some of the opposition to outdoor dining structures. And I would add the citywide move to make them permanent. And making them permanent means also setting standards, right? Because there are certainly some that don't look great or as great as they should. But that's why the city is moving towards a citywide policy with citywide standards of what they should look like, how they should be built, to make them more durable and lasting. But the concept of outdoor dining is one that has saved our small businesses in the time of COVID. That's a good thing. It's a very good thing.
Now, Jimmy, one thing, you ran for Queensborough president this year, and obviously, you came in third, but one of the takeaways from that is that you did well in Western Queens. Now, you look at that and you look at the fact that, you're out of office December 31st. Are we going to see you run for office again? Do you look at those electoral results and think, hey, there's room for Jimmy Van Bramer in the future representing one of these areas?
So let me say this. I am enormously proud of the run for borough president, and Donovan Richards and I remain very good friends. We were together at the Queens Museum earlier today. And look, we've done the numbers. So 105,000 people in the borough of Queens cast a vote for me in ranked choice voting, right? I'm enormously proud to have received over 100,000 votes. And in my district, we went through the numbers, and in every ED, and I won my district handily, but when you include ranked choice voting, between 70 and 85% of people in the district voted for me and ranked me. So I feel really good about the numbers. Those numbers don't lie, right? Those numbers would indicate a lot of support for myself, and the haters are certainly.
Yeah, well, they're not. Those voters aren't yelling at your husband.
Yeah, but the haters are going to hate, but they're not the majority, clearly. And I would also add, in the race to succeed me, the top two finishers were decidedly pro-bike lane, pro-bike infrastructure. Both Julie Wan and Amit Singh Baga had extremely progressive platforms around bike infrastructure. I'm very thrilled that Council Member-elect Julie Wan came out forcefully in favor of the Bike Boulevard when it was under construction. So that all continues. And I still have a tremendous amount of support in this district, and I hear it on the streets every day. And as to your very direct question, with a roundabout answer, I would just say that, I have certainly been approached by lots of folks that should the assembly seat in our area become vacant for any reason, should Kathy Nolan retire, for example, or the lines are redistricted so much so that there's a new assembly district, would I consider it? And while I certainly would never say never, because that's what they all tell us to say, I'm looking forward to some new challenges and some new opportunities. And
hey, it was a direct question, Jimmy. What's going on?
Yes, 12 minutes later, I'm still answering it. But I think I love public service. Public service can take many different forms, though. You don't have to be an elected official. I believe in term limits. I have always believed in term limits. I continue to believe in term limits, even though I am leaving office because of term limits. It is the right thing to do. You should have turnover. You should have new ideas. You should have new energy come in every 8 or 12 years in every area of government. I absolutely believe that is good for democracy. It's good for neighborhoods. So I'm ready to not be the council member anymore. I'm not sad about leaving. I am very optimistic about the future. And if I one day decide that I want to run again, I'm not foreclosing that, but I don't have any immediate plans, nor am I declared to run for anything at this point.
Would you ever run for council member again? 2 years' time, Julie Wan's term ends. Would you run for council again?
Well, Julie Wan's first 2-year term may be ending, but I would presume that she would want to run for re-election. So let's be clear about that. But I have no plans to run for council again, but I'm also not foreclosing any possibilities. Yeah, I'm not ruling it in, not ruling it out. I've been blessed to have some terrific opportunities present themselves, and that's very exciting.
Do you have a job lined up?
I am not at liberty to disclose anything at this particular moment in time, but I will just say that I feel very optimistic about the future, and I'm very excited about some new opportunities and new challenges to continue my public service, even if it's not in elected office, right? Again, as I said before, there are many different ways to serve your community, and I'm very, very excited for the future.
Right. What recommendations would you give to Julie Wan, given what you obviously took office in 2010? I guess times have changed a little bit. I mean, I guess you weren't subject to an avalanche of Twitter nastiness or trolls like elected officials are today. But what advice would you give to Julie?
Yeah, I mean, look, she's a very smart person who will do this job the best way that she knows how. So I think you want to, take some advice, but also do it your own way. I think that, doing what she believes is right, even in the face of sometimes intense opposition, is the way to go about this, right? You have to listen to the community. But there are too many people who conflate listening with agreeing, right? When some people say, I want that person to listen to me, what they're really saying is, I want that person to agree with me. Because I have always listened to the community. I listen to people who hate bike lanes. I listen to people, as long as they want to speak respectfully about these issues, I'm happy to engage and listen. But I think that Julie should, at the end of the day, make decisions, even when they're hard, based on what she believes is right. And then I think she'll always do good, right? Because you've got to stick to your core values and what you believe to be the right thing to do, even when it's tough.
See, she's going to be facing, like you did many times, a lot of land use issues, rezonings. Maybe that Astoria thing could come her way. Who knows? How does it work, though, as a council member, when these land use things are coming along? Do they give you a phone call and say, hey, listen, we're looking to do this in a year or two. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? Even before they get it certified? How does it kind of work? Would you get a developer calling you up to sort of sense where you stand on a rezoning before they think, oh well, before we invest millions of dollars trying to put in a rezoning application, we'll go knock on Van Bramer's door and get a sense as to whether it's worth it. Is that sort of standard? Did you find that?
Well, the truth is there are different rezonings, right? Not to get too in the weeds of the rezonings, but some are.
Well, take a Phipps, or take I don't know, the one in Woodside on Roosevelt Avenue and 63rd, or some of them in Astoria, just residential developments. That's all.
Right, but again, so some of them are driven by the city. Right, the city of New York has a city planning commission. City planning commission is charged with looking at the city in a very big picture way and determining the future of our neighborhoods. They're involved in any rezonings, whether they're private applications or in fact driven by the city. The city's Economic Development Corporation also plays a role in many of these things. So in either case, and really all of those cases, if they're going through ULURP, right, the Universal Land Use Review process, and the council member's vote is needed, yes, everyone ultimately starts by calling the council member's office and asking to meet to talk about a project, and to say, hey, we are thinking of doing this, whether that's the city, the mayor, or developers. I believe in listening to everyone and talking and meeting with everyone, even if I disagree with them. But ultimately, you have to make a decision based on what you think is in.
But would you tell them, oh, listen, you're kidding yourself?
I've said that many times to people. I've said that many times to people.
Yeah. Who have you said it to?
I'm not going to discuss any specific ones right at this moment, but there are many projects that have been proposed that I just did not think were feasible and did not think were in the best interest of our community. And they I will say this: I was once given a proposal for a building over 100 stories tall, and
wait, right on the waterfront.
A couple of them, yes. Enormous towers. and some of them, those were not ultimately moved forward with. Look, I'm not anti-progress or smart growth. We've approved development deals that I thought included meaningful affordable housing that actually allowed for smart growth. But that doesn't mean you have to approve everything, and you shouldn't approve everything. But there are projects, and Phipps is one of them, where I felt the good that was being accomplished was greater than any harm that folks were afraid of. And I know that cost me some votes. I know that there's some people upset about that. But at the end of the day, elected officials, and this is what I would say to Councilmember-elect Juan, is to do what you think is right.
Was it hard to learn to say no? I mean, a lot of people want to be liked by everybody, right? Who doesn't want to be liked? And so therefore, when someone comes along and says, "Oh, listen, can you allocate some money for this and allocate money for that, or can I build this? Can I build that?" Was it easy when you first took office to say, "Oh, listen, get lost," and did you get it? Did it become easier over the years to sort of deal with people that had these requests?
I don't think I ever said get lost.
No, well, I mean, I'm obviously hyperbole, but yeah.
It's never easy to tell constituents that you disagree with them, right? That's just not easy, because you do actually want to make everyone happy. But I represented 170,000 people. 170,000 people, right? There are cities in this country that are not that big.
Yeah.
There are mayors, right? Pete Buttigieg ran for president, and the city that he was the mayor of had 110,000 people in it.
Yeah.
And so you can't keep 170,000 people happy every day, all the time, for 12 years. And you will go crazy trying to keep all 170,000 happy every day, all the time, for 12 years. So it never was easy to disagree with folks. I mean, the only thing you could try and do is have a civil discussion, right? To listen, right? And again, listening is not necessarily agreeing with, but listening, right? There are, for example, valid concerns about 39th Avenue and the redesign, right? And I've taken the transportation commissioner out there because I've listened to people. I've seen it myself, right? 50th doesn't work the way it's intended to work right now, right? That just doesn't work as it's supposed to work right now. And that needs to be fixed. So even though I support the redesign and the concept, and I believe ultimately it makes it safer, there are still people who respectfully come to me and share reasonable concerns about 39th Avenue. And I've shared those with the Department of Transportation, and I believe there should be some changes. The problem, and you alluded to it before, is the overall breakdown in civility, right? Where, and this happens on the left and the right and lots of different places, where people just believe that they have to hate and destroy the people that they disagree with, or they believe it's absolutely appropriate to scream at and curse at the family of elected officials and the staff of elected officials. They feel that entitled in their anger to go after people in their homes and when they're at playgrounds with their children. That is never appropriate. That is disgusting and disgraceful behavior. I hope that Julie doesn't face a lot of that, but I think she's just got to protect herself and her family from some of the darkest voices that do come at you when you're an elected official.
Right. I mean, Twitter is tough on the left. Facebook is tough on the right. Do you after being in office many years, do you keep a close eye on it, or do you sort of think to yourself,
No.
"Oh man, I don't want to deal with this. This is
crazy." Let me just say, the mute function on Twitter is one of the greatest inventions in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. And I have used that whenever necessary, and I encourage Councilmember-elect Juan to use that. You can't, elected officials are not allowed to block folks on Twitter, but you can mute folks. And you certainly, I would say, should not read an awful lot of the commentary about oneself. It is almost always negative. Anonymous comment boards, including on the Queen's Post, often just there's spiral downward into insanity, and horrific things are said. It's not good for anyone to read that kind of stuff. So I stopped reading years ago the comments sections in any platform, and I would encourage Councilmember-elect Juan to do the same. All right, you can engage people in a civil way.
How many people have you muted on Twitter?
I don't know.
But is it a many?
No, I wouldn't say it's many, but
it's the same old people, I guess.
It's always the same. It's always the same trolls, right? Don't feed the trolls, and don't listen to them, right? I mean, I think if part of your happiness is getting on social media and attempting to destroy other people's careers and lives and families, you have a problem, right? That's your problem, because it is not normal behavior. Normal people can disagree with elected officials, they can weigh in on issues of the day, but if as part of what drives you is jumping on social media or anonymous comment sections and just ripping away, that's a meanness and a viciousness that very few people, I hope, possess. And I certainly would hope for anyone in elected office to have a minimum of folks like that in your life, because that kind of toxic behavior is really bad, and we all know who they are. It's obvious.
Last question, and that deals with city agencies. As a reporter, I know which agencies I get the quickest response from, which ones I find are the most on top of things. You as a council member must have sort of a list of agencies that you think are good, not so good, or just downright dreadful. What are your thoughts on the various city agencies you've dealt with over the years?
So, I'll answer that directly, but I also just want to say something about government, right? Because I think that there is this strain of belief that sort of says that government sucks, right? And everything is bad, right? I hear that from some people, right? The bike lanes ruined Sunnyside, Sunnyside. Sunnyside is just going to pot now. It's going to shit. And that is, of course, not true, right? That is wildly untrue. Sunnyside is a great, successful neighborhood. All of our neighborhoods in the district are great neighborhoods. And so too is that strain that says, oh, government never does anything right. And there's certainly a lot that we don't get right. But the vast majority of people in government work hard, try and do the right thing. The School Construction Authority is an agency that is charged with building new schools. They invest billions of dollars and are generally doing a very good job at building state-of-the-art facilities on time and delivering on the promise, right, of what they are charged to do. We find working with them to be, very, very satisfying. I think, our Department of Health and all of the agencies really that are charged with keeping New Yorkers healthy, incredibly stressed during COVID. Today, obviously, as rates increase. And so we have to give credit where credit is due, where the folks have really been faced with something unprecedented and responded to try and keep New Yorkers alive. That's government working, right? Did they get everything right? Of course not. It's a city of 9 million people in the middle of a pandemic. But a lot did work. Our New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation, right? Elmhurst Hospital, the courageous work of first responders in the middle of a pandemic. So there's a lot that's right. The Department of Parks, certainly we need more garbage pickup, and we need more maintenance of our parks. But it's a great agency that does a lot of good work to keep our parks, functioning so people could use them. And I would just, and certainly there are frustrations. The Department of Transportation can be an incredibly frustrating agency. They do some really important work. They absolutely do. And they get screamed at all the time. So every time the Department of Transportation goes before a community board meeting or a civic meeting, they just get yelled at, especially if they're talking about bike lanes. But these two are people who are trying to do good things for the city of New York. I disagree with them an awful lot. I think they need to be better and more responsive when it comes to stop signs and speed bumps but I will say this, I think, New York City is a great city. Queens is great. Our neighborhoods are doing well, by and large, right? Crime is relatively low, although it is understandably something that people think about. Our schools are good. Our parks, our libraries are well funded. Our streets are mostly clean. And where there are problems, we try and fix them. But things are generally good, right? We are lucky to live in this district. We are lucky to live in the neighborhoods that we live in. And I wish for everyone that people would be optimistic about the future, feel good about their communities, and not allow the occasional annoyances to impact their view of their world. That's just not a happy place to be. And I think we all deserve to be happy in our lives. And so that's my experience with city agencies. I could go down the list of all of them, but that's very boring. And, I think that there are some obvious ones where they need reform. And I hope that Mayor Adams and the next council will do that work.
Okay. All right, Jimmy. And just wanted to ask you, are you going to continue to live in Western Queens? Is this where we're going to see you here for the foreseeable future, you think?
This is my home. And I was born here. I was baptized at St. Teresa's. I went to PS 70 and IS 10 and Bryant High School. My communion and confirmation at St. Joe's. I've lived in Astoria, Woodside, or Sunnyside my entire 52 years in my life. I didn't move here to run for office. I am not moving away from here because I am no longer in office. We love Sunnyside. We love Woodside. We love Long Island City. I love Astoria, where my mom still lives. These are great neighborhoods. I feel lucky to live here. I know that I'm lucky to live here because I've had the job that I've had. And I know that not every neighborhood is as good as the ones that I've represented, right? I know that they don't have the incredible restaurants that we have here locally that we're able to enjoy. That folks don't always have the park options that we enjoy, that they don't always have good schools that people want to send their children to and feel good sending their children to. That we have the best library system in the world in Queens, that there's so many good people living here doing good work. And we love our home, and our home is our refuge. And Dan and I plan on living in Queens for the rest of our lives. When we get really old, we hopefully will have a retirement place to spend some time in, but it's hard for me to imagine, having lived my first 52 years in Western Queens, that I would not ever have a home in Western Queens for as long as I'm alive. This is home. It is not a political post. It is not a political place. This is where we live, and we will continue to live here and be engaged in the civic life of our community, as I believe everybody should be.
Okay. Now, any final thoughts or anything you'd like to convey now that you're leaving? I mean, this is kind of, I mean, I've covered you for 12 years. It's amazing. I started the Queen's Post when you entered office. So it's kind of, you know, it's in some ways it's a sad occasion for me too, seeing you go, because it's kind of, you started when I started. So have you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, first I want to say thank you. Thank you to the people of the 26th district who allowed me to fulfill the dream that I had virtually my entire life. You know, I've told the story before that it was in junior high school 10 when a teacher taught the lessons about John F. Kennedy running for president as the first Catholic president. I was also making my confirmation that year, and it for whatever reason took hold in my mind, and I thought maybe one day I'll run for office. But then when I realized I was gay and I was closeted, and I thought gay people can't run for office because at that point no gay person had ever run for office and won, that I certainly was aware of, I gave up that dream. But then when I came out and got active politically in the LGBT community, it was rekindled. And of course I ran in 2001 and I lost, and I came back 8 years later. This district gave me that wish fulfilled, and gave me an opportunity. And so I'm grateful, ever grateful for everyone who gave me that opportunity. And I gave it everything I had. You know, the haters be damned. I have worked my ass off. I've given my entire life to this job for 12 years. Whether you agreed with me on all the issues or not, I gave it everything. My staff, I want to thank my staff who worked incredibly hard, and sometimes got screamed at themselves, but worked really, really hard for our community, and did amazing work. We talked about some of these successes, but we didn't talk about the constituent service work. Didn't talk about the almost 50,000 people who called the office, who we were able to help, right? Keep them in their apartments, get heat restored, get gas restored. My staff and I did that work for many, many years. And so I am not sad, Christian. I'm filled with gratitude for having had this enormous chance to impact our communities in a positive way. It was an awesome responsibility. Sometimes it was really stressful, really stressful, but I asked for it. I ran for election, and I'm hopeful, you know, for the future of our neighborhoods and our district, and for me personally as well. I think I'm ready to not do it for a little while, and to take on a new challenge, and yet continue to live here and be a part of the community. So I wish my successor well, and I hope that the community continues to be safe during this pandemic, and that we continue to think about all of the things that are right in our world and right in our neighborhoods and right in our lives, rather than focusing on what's negative, and being drawn to the positive forces in our neighborhood, and not the negative ones, and appealing to our best angels as we move forward. So just thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, Jimmy. I appreciate your time today, and best wishes in the future. And I very much look forward to hearing about, your new position potentially, and also maybe a run for office again. Stay tuned, right?
What's that?
I said stay tuned.
Stay tuned. But yeah, thank you very much.